Hey folks, Jordan Sheridan here. I was not going to go live today because I am on 2 consecutive days without sleep. I'll explain that tomorrow. But it is not often in America or the world that Flint is trending on Twitter. Flint is currently trending on Twitter, which has unfortunately not been the case in recent years, even though, as I continually report, the Flint water crisis is still very much a crisis. And Flint is trending because today a judge ruled that Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Director Nick Lyon, who has been in the middle of a 10-month pretrial, that's right, pretrial, the longest pretrial in Michigan history, a judge ruled today that Nick Lyon, the charges for involuntary manslaughter related to the Flint water crisis will not be dropped, and he is what they're calling it, what they call it, binding him over to face trial, a jury trial, where a jury of his peers will rule if he did commit involuntary manslaughter, specifically when it comes to Nick Lyon, again, Director of Health and Human Services in Michigan, whether he willfully and recklessly did not alert the public, particularly Flint residents, about the Legionella outbreak and the risks of Legionella disease, a bacterial disease that claimed the lives on the public official count of 12 people in Flint. A recent report that was done by PBS Frontline said as many as 120 people might have died from Legionella or similar pneumonia in Flint. So this is, there's no way to put it, and I think I'm going to put it more eloquently tomorrow. Again, I haven't slept in 2 days. But this is like the first, I would say, crumbs of justice that we're starting to see related to the Flint water crisis and accountability. So obviously, this Nick Lyon has not been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. All that happened today was the judge has ruled from the pretrial there is enough evidence or enough of a case that he should have to face an actual trial, a jury trial. But it was the longest pretrial in Michigan history. That's what I'm reading. Do you know how much money? Guess how much money of taxpayer-funded money. So that means the people of Flint are paying for Nick Lyon's criminal defense fund and all of Governor Rick Snyder's criminal defense fund and all of the state officials under Rick Snyder. The taxpayers of Michigan are paying for their criminal defense fund. Guess how much Nick Lyon, the defense for Nick Lyon, the Department of Health and Human Services, how much his defense just for the pretrial, not the trial, which a judge has ruled is going to move over to a trial. Today, he ruled that. $1.6 million. $1.6 million just for Nick Lyon. We're not talking about the defense for all the state officials, which some stories go that it is between 15 and 20 million. 15 and 20 million. Michigan and Flint taxpayers are paying to defend the state officials that are being charged with involuntary manslaughter, criminal negligence, and other charges like that. So what you have here, honestly, I'm not going to play predictor or procrastinator whether a jury will find Nick Lyon guilty. But I tweeted earlier, what you have here is not only, in some ways, it's a double-edged sword, because in some ways, it's little crumbs of justice. Melissa Mays, who's a leading activist in Flint, when I messaged her earlier, like, what are your thoughts? She was literally stunned. This is coming from a Flint activist and resident, because Flint residents are not used to public officials, particularly the state officials that are responsible for their suffering and poisoning, actually being held accountable. They're used to a lot of talk about people being held accountable, but they're not used to people actually being held accountable. To reiterate, Nick Lyon is not being held accountable yet, but a judge has ruled he will have to face trial, which Melissa Mays and others, I don't think in Flint, because they have basically been used to state officials not only overseeing their poisoning, but then covering it up and then really not being held responsible at all. So it's, I would say, tiny little crumbs of justice, the fact that this judge, by the way, the judge not only ruled that he will and must face trial, a jury trial, the judge called him corrupt. The judge called Nick Lyon, and I quote, corrupt. So, well, obviously I'll cover it when the trial happens. And it is also a very, very striking example of the American justice or injustice system. Because Nick Lyon, because he's a powerful state official, because he's connected to the governor as his top health officer, because he has all the money in the world to defend himself, he got a 10-month pretrial with some of the best defense money could buy. Yeah, a judge has ruled he will have to face trial, but at least he had a fighting chance. If you don't have money in this country, if you're not a state official, if you don't have a governor mandating that the taxpayers are going to pay for your defense fund, you're not getting a 10-month pretrial. You're not getting fancy lawyers to fight for you. And even Nick Lyon, even though a judge ruled that he will have to face trial, that's kind of unprecedented. Look it up in other states. A pretrial lasting 10 months. He got a 10-month pretrial because he's a state official. He's connected to other corrupt state officials. And the system and the taxpayer-funded money that was paying for his defense. Again, $1.6 million just for Nick Lyon's pretrial defense. Pretrial defense. I'm getting that from an ABC 12 reporter in Flint. She reported that. Amy, I don't know. I'll follow up tomorrow and have her name. But the bottom line is, Amy Perriette from ABC 12 in Detroit. But the bottom line is, do you think I would have money for a 10-month defense for a pretrial to try and stave off actually going for trial? Do you think a black person in St. Louis or Chicago would get that kind of defense? Or Flint? No. So although we should be happy for the tiny little crumbs of justice that this Director of Health and Human Services, who, like Governor Snyder, he knew well in advance, way before he says he knew, of the risks of lead poisoning as well as Legionella. But the messaging out of Rick Snyder and his officials was nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. If you pretend it doesn't exist, there's no problem. And they did this for 18 months.
Periscope just featured your broadcast.
Really? Mm-hmm. Interesting. I don't know how that works, but fantastic. So what's really, really incredible about this is the first, yes, there have been charges against 15 state officials, but this is the first time somebody is actually having to go to trial. A judge has ruled. Nick Lyon, who's basically, I mean, there's no other way to say it, the biggest scalp. He is the biggest scalp. He is the highest ranked state official, Director of Health and Human Services. The fact that he will have to face a jury trial is a big, big step in the right direction. And I think what's really important about this from not just a government point of view, but just a humanity point of view, some people ask me, well, why do you continually cover Flint? There's other cities with lead problems and water problems. Wait till I tell you a major Michigan outlet who decided not to take a certain story I was pitching them that we're going to get out either way, saying, well, there's other cities with lead problems, so it doesn't really matter what you found in Flint. Anyway, the point is, if no one's held accountable in Flint and government officials are basically allowed to perpetrate something called environmental racism, which is when you have a city like Flint that's predominantly minority and more importantly, predominantly poor, broke and bankrupt. Well, they don't particularly care if the residents are crying or screaming or hollering for help for 18 months that our water is brown or our water tastes funky or our water smells or we're getting rashes or we're getting sick or we're getting autoimmune issues or we're getting nosebleeds or we're getting hair loss, right? So basically what you have here, if there is not accountability for the government officials in Flint, that will be the blueprint for every other city and municipality or town where there's a water problem that the government caused it. They'll look at Flint and they'll know how to escape accountability. That's why it's so important. Nick Lyon, no matter what I think or you think or any of these state officials think, you are innocent until proven guilty, especially if you're a rich white person in America. So he's entitled to the best defense money can buy. Actually, no, he's not entitled to it, but he is entitled to defend himself in front of a jury. But the point is, the fact that he's even being made to go to trial is a huge victory, because really what we've had up until now, and this is day 1,500 something, I lost count, 1,500. It's over 1,500 days since they switched the water in 2014. We're going to be going on 5 years as of next year. And by the way, Jen and I were just in Flint, a month ago, reporting. Over 4 years later, and you don't see this on CNN or any of these places. You see it on my YouTube, youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. You literally have at churches 3 to 5 hour lines wrapped around for blocks to get 2 cases of bottled water from churches. This is not the government providing the bottled water anymore. Governor Snyder shut down the free water bottle pods, they called it, basically stations that you could find in Flint. There was 9 at the highest point. He shut them down. He cited some, in my view, cherry-picked data, and that's what our report that we're trying to get out is about. He cited some data that's highly questionable and say, oh, there's no need for bottled water anymore. Well, the residents of Flint don't agree. And if you look at the residents of Flint, every day you could look, hashtag Flint water crisis. It might not be trending like it is now today. And you could look, you will see people today posting images every day of brown water coming out of their taps. You will see people posting images of rashes they had. Jen and I, while we were there, not only were we online, not ourselves, but we were interviewing people online for 3 to 5 hours over 4 years later. Can you imagine that? You would expect 3 to 5 hour lines for water, like say there's a hurricane coming at gas stations, or the crisis just happened and people are stacking up, so they have to wait on lines. You're talking over 4 years later. And you have a lot of journalists basically regurgitating what the state officials who created the problem and created the crisis in the first place, they're just regurgitating whatever the state officials feed them. So if the state officials tell them, well, we tested X amount of homes and we found the lead levels are meeting EPA regulations, so Flint's now fine, they just regurgitates that. They don't actually look into, well, how are they choosing these homes? Are these homes actually connected to lead service lines? You're not going to have a lead problem. You're not going to have a major lead problem if you're not connected to a lead service line or a galvanized steel line. So we've had a lot of media regurgitation. We haven't had boots on the ground to do the reporting. I was even surprised to see these lines for 3 to 5 hour lines. First person I spoke with said they were there at 7 a.m. When I interviewed them, it was 11:30. These people are online 3 to 5 hours to get 2 cases of bottled water. And majority of the people we spoke with don't have time to do it. A lot of people are doing it for other people. They're stepping in line for loved ones. They're stepping in line for senior citizens that can't carry the cases. They're stepping in line for friends and family who cannot get off work to sit in a line for 3 to 5 hours. And we met families that literally were out of water. And you ask, well, if the EPA and the state of Michigan are saying, well, the water levels are fine, why can't they just drink with the filter? Well, why don't you go to Flint, drink the water with a filter, see how it tastes. Trust me. So I think it's, we got to take small victories. It's wonderful that Flint is trending. I will be gasping, and I can't wait to see if Rachel Maddow covers this tonight. My faith in humanity will be restored because fearless Rachel, who basically covered Flint in 2016, did a good job in that original reporting. I think there's been some holes, shall we say, in her reporting since. So we need the media to pay attention here. It's not just about Nick Lyon having to now face trial. It's about the fact that there are 3 to 5 hour water lines over 4 years later in an American city, okay? We knocked on 400 doors for the report that we're going to publish soon that will clearly show you that the numbers they're putting out and the lead levels they're putting out are not what they are saying. And I don't want to say more, but we have found clear evidence of that. But what we're also finding, because we did the reporting, you knock on doors, people are showing you their fresh rashes from bathing in the water. Like, they're not getting rashes from, the heat lamp. They're getting rashes. We met a 1-year-old baby, 1-year-old infant, with white blisters all over her arms and legs. The family had just moved in there a month before we interviewed them. She's getting white blisters all over her arms, her legs. She had some in her ear, too. That's going to be in the documentary that we're currently working on, showing our reporting. So, basically, in a nutshell, this Nick Lyon thing is pretty big. This Nick Lyon thing, obviously, he could be found not guilty in a jury trial. The preponderance of the burden is on the prosecution, obviously. I think I said that wrong. Basically, the prosecution has to do it with beyond a reasonable doubt, right? But the fact that a state official as high as the Department of Health and Human Services, the director, is being made to face trial is a big deal. I mean, it's a very big deal, not just for Flint, but for accountability in America, so that public officials, public servants, even though they're not really public servants, 99% of them are bought off, realize, if you ignore a poor community, if you ignore a community like Flint, or you don't take it seriously when they're crying out, hollering and screaming that their water tastes funky and their water's causing rashes and hair loss and cognitive things and nosebleeds and all this stuff. People have had cancers. People have died. You're going to be held accountable, whether it's a rich town or a poor town. And by the way, if you remember my reporting in Indiana, I've reported in Indiana on the East Chicago-led crisis. Another thing that doesn't trend on Twitter, unfortunately. Well, guess who was the governor of Indiana when this happened? Our vice president, Mike Pence. He was the governor. Never went down to East Chicago, Indiana, when lead levels were found to be over 200 times the limit in the soil where children were playing in a government housing complex. A government housing complex that was 99% black. Okay? Mike Pence never went down there. He was too busy kissing donors' behinds on the campaign trail. Well, you know where Mike Pence did go earlier that year? Take a guess. Greentown, Indiana, 97% white. When they had a problem with their water, Governor Pence came in and his parachute, problem fixed in 2 months. Sometimes you just got to call it what you see it. That's environmental racism. Okay? By the way, in Michigan right now, they're finding PFOA, which are cancer-causing chemicals, which we found Ohio River Valley. They dump these chemicals into the river water for decades. There was a $600-something million settlement. $670 billion settlement, I believe, last year, where DuPont and Chemours had to pay this settlement. Look me up on that. I'm not sure if it was 672 million or billion. It was a big settlement. They found these same cancer-causing chemicals in Cape Fear River in North Carolina, which I was down there. Now they're finding PFOA in other towns and cities in Michigan. Well, let me tell you something. Not that white people shouldn't have a response. Not that middle class and wealthier white people shouldn't have the government swiftly respond. But you look at the difference of the Michigan government's response to the cancer-causing PFOA chemical outbreak they're finding, and this is chemicals that they find in making cookware like Teflon. These are the chemicals that are found in manufacturing Teflon and things like that. They're on it. They're on it. They're providing bottled water. They're not telling the residents in these mostly white towns and cities where they're finding this in Michigan for 18 months, there's nothing to see here. So we also have to acknowledge there's a major difference in response to water problems, whether it's lead or whether it's these other chemicals that are not lead. Flint, it's over 4 years. Can you imagine? Over 4 years. Some third world countries might get a better response than that. So, in a nutshell, Nick Lyon will have to face face a jury trial for involuntary manslaughter. He is the top official that was charged. So we will see if this sets off a domino effect where Eden Wells, who is also in pretrial, one of the longest pretrials in state history, we will see if a judge rules that she also will have to face trial. I think this is a big defeat for Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. By the way, in what world is it acceptable that the Director of Health and Human Services was in a 10-month pretrial and was still allowed to be the Director of Health and Human Services? Now he's going over to face criminal jury trial, and Governor Snyder, in response today, said he's going to keep him in place, running Health and Human Services. In what world does that make sense? I mean, again, he should have access to a defense, and a jury will find him guilty or not guilty. But why is he still running the Department of Health and Human Services in Flint? Not in Flint, in Michigan. Doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of benefits have been given to these powerful, connected, white state officials, if you ask me. So a few public service announcements before I end. Number one, go to youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. You can see all my Flint water crisis reporting there. We have a playlist for the Flint water crisis. youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Click on the playlist. You can see all the videos. Jen was actually at the courthouse a few weeks ago covering part of this pretrial. She was the only journalist. I had 100, what did I have, 102 fever that day?
Yeah.
She was the only journalist that had the temerity to ask the defense attorney to comment on the recent PBS story that said, over 100 people might have died from Legionella. The rest of the local media that was asking questions might as well have been holding his cup of coffee because it was pathetic. So youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Check out the Flint water crisis playlist. Go to jordansheridan.com also. Enter your email. We want to grow our reporting. We want to make sure you know what we're reporting on, where we are going, because we're going to be in the field as well, and also know when are we going live, you're going to get exclusive news first. We're not going to send you 25 emails a week, but we do want to keep you in the loop. It's as simple as jordansheridan.com. Put in your email. Am I forgetting anything, Jen?
Yes, you are.
Oh, and here is the original. Hats don't look good on me. This is
Yeah, it hasn't had its
Status
bill bent.
Coup, which we are officially launching in the next month, right?
Yeah, should be early September.
This is the media network, so it will not be Jordan Sheridan Reports anymore. It will not be an individual. It will be an army status coup, because we need a coup d'etat in this country, a journalistic coup d'etat. I'm different than Alex Jones. I preach non-violence. Let me be clear, non-violence. Keep all lethal things at home. We are going to be armed with the facts, the truth, in a peaceful, journalistic way. But make no mistake, we're not launching this company to go viral all the time and get clicks and go to cocktail parties. No. We're launching this because the status quo in this country, it's enough. It's enough. And the media in this country, the corporate media in particular, is in existence to perpetuate the status quo at most of your expense. So that's what we're launching. In the short term, still, youtube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports, and make sure you go to my website, enter your email, and you can become a Patreon subscriber too. You guys are keeping us alive. I think we're at 400 now. In a few months, we've gotten 400. We want to grow. Your support, honestly, is the only way we could go out in the field and cover the stories you want. I'm not going to give you cheesy lines like we can't do it without you. No, quite literally, we cannot do this without your financial support. So thank you to the 400 that have been contributing. You could also contribute in other ways. paypal.me/status coup. But if you're just coming to this late, honestly, I've been to Flint 12 times. I've been covering this for 2 years. I'd say legally, this is the biggest day in the Flint water crisis as far as getting legal accountability for. It's more than 12 people that died from Legionella. And as Jen and I could tell you, and Jen can tell you, we just knocked on 400 doors. You cannot go a block in Flint without finding at least 3 or 4 people that just died recently within the last year or two. And we're not talking.
That's no exaggeration.
We're not talking 75 to 80-year-olds. We're talking a lot of people that have recently died, 40s, 50s, all over Flint. We went north side, south side, west side, east side. We literally knocked on over 400 doors. It was depressing. We would knock on doors, dead, dying. It's a total mess. Flint, if Chicago is a war zone, Flint is literally an emergency room that unfortunately is not being treated like an emergency room. It's being treated like, I don't know the analogy. But I will definitely be covering this more tomorrow on my official live stream. But like I said at the beginning, it's not often in America or world you see Flint trending anymore. So I wanted to make sure to go live during that. And Jen, is there anything I forgot because I haven't slept in 2 days?
No, I think that's it. Just everyone keep following and sharing and all that.
Thank you. Night.